All right, so today we're cracking open a document that's been something of an underground legend in South Africa for well over 2 decades now. It is dense, it's very controversial, and frankly, it weaves an absolutely incredible story. So let's pull back the curtain and really see what this is all about.
You know, this quote, right from the document's own preface, it's the perfect place to start. It's really the central idea that drives this entire narrative. The claim that what we all see on the political stage is just a performance, and the real power is being wielded by hands we can't see.
Now, before we really jump in, it is so important to be crystal clear about our goal here. We are simply mapping out the incredible story presented in High Treason. Our job isn't to prove or disprove its claims, but just to neutrally lay out the narrative as the author wrote it.
So, what is this story? Well, at its very heart, it's a grand conspiracy theory. The author alleges that post-apartheid South Africa is not at all what it seems. Instead, they claim it's actually the battleground for a hidden war for control.
The document's entire argument really hinges on this one massive claim, that 3 separate, secret factions are pulling the strings of government, finance, and public life, all for their own hidden agendas. And believe me, this single idea is the key to understanding everything that comes next.
And that, of course, is the million-dollar question, right? If there's a secret war being fought for the country, who are the players? Well, the text spends a lot of time in its first section trying to identify them for us.
The author lays out 3 very distinct groups of, let's call them, puppeteers, each with its own ideology, its own support base, and a terrifyingly different vision for what the nation's future should be.
So the author's alleged villains fall into 3 main camps. First up, you have the Enlightened Action Group, or EAG. They're painted as a kind of old boys club of former apartheid elites who want to rule from the shadows. Then you've got the Wise Men, supposedly a communist presidium pushing their ideology. And finally, a global network of Islamic extremists who, the author claims, want to create a Muslim state. It's really presented as a clash of old power, new ideology, and religious ambition.
Now, while the document introduces all 3 groups, the author spends most of their time focused on who they see as the main architects of the whole conspiracy, the Enlightened Action Group, or EAG, whose real name, by the way, is allegedly unknown.
So, who exactly are the EAG? Well, according to the text, it's this small elite group of about 38 white South Africans, all from the old regime. The author even names names. Prominent figures like former Foreign Minister Pik Botha and former Defense Minister Magnus Malin are listed as being core members.
So how would a tiny group like this even attempt to take control? The document lays out this incredibly audacious 5-point plan, and it's a strategy for total control. You compromise the new leaders, you seize the economy, you control the spies, you create chaos in public works, and you find powerful foreign allies. It's essentially described as a blueprint for a silent coup.
Okay, so a huge piece of this alleged plan comes down to money. Specifically, how do you generate just impossible amounts of it secretly? The document gets into this really dense concept called high-yield investment programs, which are described as these secretive financial schemes used to create untraceable cash to fund their entire operation.
And the numbers the author throws around are just staggering. They put a figure on it. 16 trillion US dollars. I mean, think about that. That's a war chest allegedly larger than the economies of most countries on the entire planet. So, you've got this immense wealth. You've got a clear plan. How do these groups allegedly go about destabilizing an entire country? Well, the narrative paints this picture of controlled chaos, where every single crisis actually serves a hidden purpose.
What's interesting is that the 2 main groups allegedly used completely different playbooks. The narrative claims the EAG favored what you'd call hard power, things like escalating crime, engineering financial scandals, and using their old foreign intelligence connections with agencies like the CIA and MI6. The Wise Men, on the other hand, allegedly preferred soft power, political infiltration, controlling the media, and mobilizing labor unions to do their bidding.
The really crucial idea here is this concept of contamination. The text argues that many top officials in the new government were compromised long before they ever took power. They were either recruited as spies back in the apartheid era or tangled up in criminal activities, which of course would make them incredibly easy to control. The author then takes this theory and weaves it into almost every major crisis and scandal of that era.
Everything from the controversial arms deal and massive smuggling operations to spies in the cabinet and the taxi wars on the streets. Even the assassination of Chris Hani is presented as just one more thread in this vast tapestry of destabilization.
And just to really underscore the sheer scale of this alleged infiltration, the narrative makes this absolutely shocking claim that 80% of the ANC's top leadership were, whether they knew it or not, instruments of the EAG's plan. That's an accusation that goes right to the very, very top.
So, where does all this lead? What is the ultimate goal of this decades-long, multi-layered, incredibly complex conspiracy?
Well, the author first tells us what the goal isn't, and it's not a simple, nostalgic wish to return to the old system. No, the alleged masterminds are thinking much, much bigger than that.
And here it is, the ultimate reveal. The grand prize is supposedly the creation of a brand new superpower, a United States of Southern Africa, which would combine the huge mineral wealth of the entire region. This new state would be controlled from the shadows by the EAG, and it would become a dominant player in a so-called New World Order.
So, as we wrap this up, it's pretty clear the author of High Treason didn't just write a simple report. They constructed an entire alternate reality. It is a vast, complex web of accusations that tries to link local crime to global finance and political scandals to a hidden, world-altering agenda.
You know, whether you look at this as a shocking exposé or just an elaborate piece of fiction, the document definitely succeeds in leaving you with one deeply unsettling question. It's a question that was clearly the author's whole point from the very first page. At the end of the day, who is truly in control?